Hi, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm John Beck, Esri Law Enforcement Manager, and I'm joined today by Chris Delaney, our Law Enforcement Technical Lead. Today we're going to be talking about applications of workforce for ArcGIS for law enforcement agencies. If you aren't familiar with workforce, it's the latest in Esri's line of mobile applications that work with your organizational ArcGIS account. Workforce can help you plan, manage, and complete activities in the field. It works on any smartphone or tablet, and with it you can assign tasks to officers in the field. When they receive an assignment, it will help them navigate to it, document their activity, and then navigate to the next task. Chris will discuss how workforce can be applied to law enforcement workflows, show us how to get started, and as time allows, we'll answer some of your questions at the end of the webinar. As always, you can type your question and I'll try and answer them as we go, and then if we have time, we'll answer some at the end. So let's get started, Chris, by discussing how ArcGIS has evolved from our days as analysts to from the system of record to the system of engagement using Web GIS and the enterprise system we see today. So, what do we mean when we talk about Web GIS?
Hi, John. Thanks, and good morning, everybody on the West Coast, and good afternoon, everybody on the East Coast. So, as John mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit today about one of our new apps, Workforce for ArcGIS. But before we do that, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about why those apps matter and what Esri has been doing to help law enforcement agencies and all of the different industries that Esri supports to be able to leverage spatial information more effectively. So as John mentioned, as I'm sure many of you are currently, GIS is used throughout law enforcement in desktop fashions using ArcMap to support the common workforce workflow tasks that you do every day, whether it's hotspot analysis or geocoding, things of this nature. And in addition, our server products are utilized to serve applications like your CAD and RMS systems with authoritative address matching, or to power individual apps that your organization may have to support various mapping needs. But the thing that we hear from our customers most frequently is their data is not organized adequately to support all of the needs from a spatial perspective of the organization, and that's really what Web GIS is about, and the direction that Esri's platform has moved towards to enable any data source in your organization to be exposed as a service, and all those services can be secured and shared and organized through a central portal for your organization that enables you to build web-based maps and share those web-based maps into any number of apps, whether it's configurable apps that Esri provides or whether it's apps from business partners that help you extend your law enforcement missions. So when it comes to Web GIS from an Esri perspective, we're really talking about three core components of an enterprise Web GIS. And the first is obviously services. It's your spatial data from authoritative sources, whether it's your CAD system, RMS, or your geocoding, and being able to make those services accessible to everyone. Additionally, the ability to take your outputs as crime analysts or other professional GIS users that you create in ArcGIS Desktop and expose those as services. And those services in a Web GIS platform ultimately go into your agency's portal. And that portal serves a number of important purposes. First, it enables you to secure services so that through a named user approach to security that can be federated with Active Directory or other enterprise security structures, you're able to control who has access to which services. And then for those users, they now have the ability to discover the different data sets they've been provisioned and to be able to make maps in a web browser-based environment that's very easy to use. From there, they're then able to push those web maps into apps And Esri provides a variety of configurable apps that are easy to use. They don't require development or coding skills that can fill various mission gaps and workflow needs. And one example of those apps is what we'll be talking about today, Workforce for ArcGIS. But Workforce is really just the newest, but one of a whole array of different apps. And many in law enforcement generally tend to think about spatial analysis first and the role that it plays in supporting allocation of law enforcement resources. Typically in our current in the current environment, many analysts use ArcMap, but ArcMap isn't necessarily the right fit for everyone. It's a complicated program and can be difficult to learn for people who are just starting using GIS, or for whom GIS is just a small part of their job and they need something lighter. They need to do spatial analysis, but they don't need all of the heavy, powerful tools that a desktop GIS provides. So a Web GIS approach enables a variety of different applications. So if it's for your field supervisors and they just get some spreadsheet data they need to make a quick map out of, we have an add-in from ArcGIS Maps for Office that enables them to geocode data in a spreadsheet and make a map out of it from within Microsoft Excel. For users who are only occasional users of spatial analysis, we have a new product that's coming out this December called Insights. It is an intuitive, drag and drop, card-based, dynamic analysis tool that combines spatial analysis with charting and graphing. It will be available for our on-premise portals at our 10.5 release in December, and will be available in ArcGIS Online later next year. It's a very exciting tool. We'll be talking more about it in webinars in the coming months. But it really fits a lot of needs where we might have introductory analysts, or we might have intelligence analysts who only spatial analysis sometimes, but they need some lightweight tools that fit how they want to work. And then, of course, for GIS professionals and law enforcement agencies, folks doing strategic analysis, leveraging ArcGIS Desktop, so not only ArcMap, but its sister product, ArcGIS Pro, that was released last year, that enables 2D and 3D analysis at 64-bit. It's more robust, and enhancing that capability by leveraging GeoAnalytics Server, which was December. GeoAnalytics Server enables you to perform many of the most common spatial analysis tasks on big data sets. So you don't have to wait all day for running a kernel density on 2 million records. You can run it using GeoAnalytics Server and return results in a matter of minutes. So spatial apps are how a lot of law enforcement agencies interact with Esri products, but in addition to those spatial apps, analysis apps that I just referenced, we also have a variety of app builders. These are configurable template tools that enable you to build your own web applications. So various types of web application templates, whether it's story maps or collecting or editing data, comparing different types of maps. We have a web app builder product that enables you to combine different widgets that have various map-based functionality to make your own semi-custom app. Or our sister product called App Studio, which enables you to build native apps for iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and deploy them right into the App Store for that appropriate operating system. In addition to those kinds of capabilities, we've got a lot of capabilities around extending needs for citizen engagement and public-facing capabilities. Many people are unaware that ArcGIS Online includes an out-of-the-box capability to deploy an open data portal. So you get an open data portal with your ArcGIS Online organizational subscription. You don't have to go out and do a separate RFP with a separate vendor to get an open data portal. You already have access to it. And leveraging some of those configurable web apps to give you the ability to build your own public crime maps or public dashboards, or to create story maps that help your citizens understand who your community policing officers are, where your next engagement events are, or to tell stories about major investigations that you've recently done. And in addition to those kinds of capabilities, we also have apps for the field, and that's what we're talking about today. The ability to support a complete workflow around field operations with configurable apps from ArcGIS. And you know, when we kind of hear from our customers about their needs in the field, we generally see of operations where first you need to plan for whatever activity that you're doing in the field, and you'd use ArcGIS for desktop to organize layers that would be utilized in the process of whatever kind of field work is being done. And then using Workforce for ArcGIS, you're able to coordinate assignments of tasks to field officers and enable those field officers to view their tasks and to take action on them. And those actions might be first to navigate from their current location to the location of the assignment, and for that they can utilize our Navigator for ArcGIS app. This becomes particularly important because Navigator enables you to develop custom routing and network packages and deliver them to your customers. So if the routing in a standard public-based system like Apple Maps or Google Maps doesn't fit the needs of your organization because of some nuances about your road structure, whether it's private roads or things of that nature, you can develop your own map packages and provide your authoritative routing information into the field to support routing for activities. And then once you get to the location where you're doing work, to be able to capture data. And we have a variety of apps for that, whether it's Collector for ArcGIS to collect map-based data, or Survey123 for ArcGIS, where you can build and deploy form-based data capture with conditional logic. So as you pick an answer to a question, different additional questions pop up. And then to be able to monitor the activities of all your field workers by tracking locations, as well as tracking the data that they're capturing using our Operations Dashboard product. So together, the suite of ArcGIS apps for the field really enable you to support any field-based organizational process that you might have in your law enforcement agency. But today we really want to focus on the coordination aspects of field work, and for that we're going to talk about Workforce for ArcGIS. So what is Workforce for ArcGIS? Well, it's really our out-of-the-box set of applications that can help you create assignments and schedule them to your field workers, and then to be able, through a native app for your field workers, to be able to view their tasks lists of cases or tasks they've been assigned and take action on those tasks. So when it comes to using Workforce for ArcGIS, there's a number of important roles to know about. First, when it comes to setting up Workforce for ArcGIS, there's an administrative role to using this app. And that administrative role is ultimately responsible for setting up Workforce so that it can support your field operations. And the way we organize Workforce for ArcGIS is under what we call a project. And so anytime you're going to use Workforce for ArcGIS for some kind of workflow, you're going to set up a unique project for that workflow. And that project is going to enable you to control the different types of assignments that you might be assigning your field workers to. You're going to identify all of the field workers that are going to be part of the assignment, so the eligible officers that you might be dispatching tasks to, as well as their contact information and things of that nature. And then also configuration of the maps and layers that will support those workforce projects for both the person who will be doing the assigning and the officers on the field in their mobile device. So in addition to the initial setup that gets done in Workforce for ArcGIS by an administrator role, one of the next roles is that of a dispatcher or a supervisor. And the role of a dispatcher or supervisor in Workforce for ArcGIS is to do a couple of key things. First, through a web application, they will have the ability to create new work assignments. So they'll be able to either select a location on a map, they'll be able to type in an address, and then assign a particular task to one of the officers who are part of the Workforce project. They can filter and sort different assignments. They can also view the current location of all of the workers who are part of that Workforce project, because the Workforce for ArcGIS native app that is part of Workforce enables background location tracking. So you're able to get from a supervisory or a dispatcher role perspective the real-time location of any of your assets in the field. And so when you are, as a dispatcher, creating an assignment, you've got a number of different fields that you can control. You're able to control the status of the assignment. Has it been assigned? Is it unassigned? Is it currently in progress? Has it been completed? You can assign a priority level of it or a due date. You can indicate the person you're assigning it to, and you can describe a type from a drop-down field that the administrator has predefined. You also have the ability to control, from a worker perspective in the field, the status of your activity on that assignment. You can choose as a worker in the field to decline the assignment. You can pause it. You can indicate that you're currently working on it and that you completed it. And any of the tasks that you do in Workforce include behind-the-scenes date timestamps, so you're able to track who did what, when, and where. In addition to being able to capture that information, you can capture notes about the assignment, so a short description of what the assignment is, and you can also incorporate attachments, whether it's pictures or related documents that are relevant to the nature of that particular task. So that's the perspective from the person who is doing the assigning. The sister app in Workforce for ArcGIS to our web app that's for the supervisors/dispatchers is the native apps for mobile workers. And so there'll be mobile apps available for iOS, for Android, and for Windows phones. And this will enable field staff to access all of the cases that they've been assigned. They can view their assignments on a map. They can read the attributes about the assignment. They can get notifications when a new assignment comes in through the notification capabilities of that mobile device. You can indicate your current working status, so whether you're currently active or you're on break or you're off duty. And you can provide edit notes on the activities that you've done. And you also have the ability to integrate with other apps in the ArcGIS ecosystem. So, for example, when you log into Workforce for ArcGIS and you see a task you've been assigned, you can select to have Workforce integrate with a number of the other ArcGIS apps that you may have on your mobile device. So, for example, once you've received an assignment, you need to know how to get there. And so you can, from Workforce, open Navigator and have your current location that was indicated in Workforce be routed to the location of the assignment, and it will give you turn-by-turn directions using Navigator. And then next, once you've arrived at that location, you can, through Workforce, open Collector for ArcGIS to go out and capture data that you may need to capture as part of your assignment task. Or alternatively, you could open Survey 123 from Workforce to capture form-based data. So interaction across multiple ArcGIS apps is all facilitated through Workforce for ArcGIS, which makes it a very easy to use solution. So now let's take a look at how this works in practice. And I apologize in advance. My display for my iPad is running a little bit slow, so everyone, if you please bear with me, I really appreciate it. The example that I want to show today is around how you might use a Workforce for ArcGIS to manage community complaints. And so the example I'll be using is a community policing unit that has an administrative assistant, a sergeant, and then a number of community policing officers who go out and work complaints that the office receives. And their typical workflow is the administrative assistant might get calls from the community, and she would typically log those calls in an Excel spreadsheet, which the sergeant could get access to, look at the complaints, and task them out to the officers for follow-up. Instead, using ArcGIS, an analyst or an administrator is able to configure a project for Workforce that has a number of common assignment types. So here I've been able to add in types for complaints and noise and garbage, many of the common quality of life complaints that a community policing unit would deal with. I can add in all of my various personnel who will be part of my community policing unit. So I've got some of my sergeants and my officers who are involved, as well as my admin. And then I can also determine which apps I want to integrate to this project so my officers can use those apps as well during their process. So here I've connected to both Navigator to help my officers route to their complaints, as well as Collector for ArcGIS to enable them to capture data in the field. So let's take a look at how this actually works in practice. So using my example, let's first imagine that we are the administrative assistant who receives calls from the public using Workforce for ArcGIS. After she takes a call, she's able to start a new assignment in Workforce for ArcGIS. So in this case, we've received a call for a neighbor dispute, and it is at a particular location that I can either pick on a map and the map will reverse geocode, or I can use the search box to enter in the address that was received by the caller. In this case, I could also assign it to an officer, but I'm not going to do that yet because the sergeant does that. But this is kind of a medium level priority. It needs to be due in a week. I could assign it a ID, and I could add a simple description. Complainant is feuding with next door neighbor over access to common driveway. And then I can create the assignment. And now, as those assignments come in, if I was the sergeant, I'd have the ability on any given day to come into my Workforce project, and I can filter. I could see all of the currently active cases, or in this case, in the morning, the thing I would like to do is just look at the cases that have come in that are unassigned that I need to assign. Now, I could just go ahead and pick someone, but Workforce also enables me as the sergeant to make a couple of different decisions about how I might choose which officer to assign this task to. If I click on the Workers tab of Workforce, I can see all of the officers in my unit. And on the map, I can see their present location if they're currently listed as working. So I can see that Officer Belladin is right here, and it takes me right to Officer Belladin's location. I can see Officer Bariani is near her as well. And I can see a number here that indicates the number of current cases they have assigned to them. So I can, as a sergeant, make decisions on who to assign this task to by both location and current workload. And so in this case, I would choose to assign it to Officer Delaney, even though he's got a lot of cases already. He's the closest to this particular case. So I can select this case now and assign this to Officer Delaney. And now Officer Delaney will receive a notification that he's been assigned this case and can begin work. So now let's take a look at what that looks like from a mobile worker perspective. So here I am on my iPad. I'm one of the community policing officers, and I've been assigned a new case. To go work on that, I'm going to go to Workforce for ArcGIS, one of the mobile apps that I have available to me on my iPad or on my iPhone. And I'm able to immediately see a list of all of the cases that I've been assigned. I also have the ability to see all the other active officers who are working on my shift with me. And I can see that I have a critical complaint for drug activity. I can open up this complaint. And when I open up the complaint, I could see information about when it was added and any relative notes associated with this particular task. I can indicate that I'm going to start working on this now. And the first thing that I need to do in working on it is to go from my current location to the location of the task. If I press this little box button, I'm able to have options to integrate Workforce for ArcGIS to some of the other apps on my device. So I can first choose to navigate to this particular assignment, which opens Navigator to ArcGIS, and it's going to give me the ability to create a route and get turn-by-turn directions for my from my current location to the location of this drug activity complaint. So it'll pull up the directions, and then I have the ability to now start navigation and get turn-by-turn navigation from my current location to the location of that complaint. Once I arrive at that location, I can return back to Workforce for ArcGIS, and I can begin to do work and capture data on that complaint. So to do that, I can go back and collect at assignment, and that's going to open for me Collector for ArcGIS, take me to the exact location of the complaint, and now I'm able to capture data at that location and start to populate information about that complaint and the actions that I took on it. So this becomes a very, very simple way in which I can start to capture data. I can, from this particular location, after I've captured all the data that I need, submit this information up, and it is now immediately available for anyone else, including my supervisor, to have access to the information that I've collected about the complaint. So this is that's a really simple overview of how Workforce works. It just becomes a very simple mechanism by which you can create assignments for field officers, dispatch them into the field, and for field officers to be able to utilize those assignments, see what assignments have been assigned to them, and use other tools in the ArcGIS apps toolbox to be able to do other field tasks relevant to doing work on that particular activity. So that was just a quick example. I want to talk now about some of the other ways in which you might be able to apply Workforce for ArcGIS and some of these other ArcGIS apps to support field applications across law enforcement. So we just talked about supporting citizen quality of life complaints, but for patrol operations, you may also find that Workforce has a lot of benefit for managing proactive assignments. So in many agencies, a certain percentage of the day is allocated to doing proactive tasks, and sergeants need to coordinate which officers are doing what tasks, and those officers are receiving taskings on what proactive activities they're supposed to do on any given day. So Workforce could facilitate that kind of activity, whether it's targeted foot patrols or special attentions at particular locations, attendance at community meetings. Or for investigators, in the absence of a formal case management system, you can leverage Workforce for ArcGIS as a way to coordinate current case assignments between a detective, sergeant, and investigators, whether that's crime by certain crime types, or if you're doing IA-related work on use of force complaints and things of that nature. And similarly, you can use Workforce for ArcGIS to support major cases where you have a missing person or other scenarios that involve large amounts of public tips that need to be followed up in some coordinated way. I mean, whether it's a fugitive, missing person, Amber Alert, you have to find a way to make sense and allocate all of those tips to be followed up on. Workforce would enable your coordination staff to coordinate with officers and investigators working the field to do investigative tasks on those tips. From an administration perspective, Workforce could be a solution for coordination of warrant and civil paper service. So as those civil papers and warrants are coming in, an administrative assistant has the ability to enter those into Workforce for ArcGIS so that deputies are able to see what they've been assigned and service those warrants and civil papers. Or to support workflows around sex offender address verification as part of statutory obligations that law enforcement agencies have. So as sex offenders come up for validation of their address and they failed to report to the agency, Workforce could be utilized to assign officers task lists to go out to their last known address and attempt to track them down and validate their current address. From a special teams perspective, layers in ArcGIS can also be brought into Workforce so that the locations in the map are things like parcels or a grid to support a missing person or grid-based search. So in a special teams context, if you were doing some kind of search, you can select each building within the search area or each grid within the search area and task it out to an officer for follow-up to canvass the complete area within the search area. And then there's one other capability that Workforce is particularly well suited for as a alternative option for scenarios where law enforcement are doing some kind of event or critical incident management, and there is a need to support real-time tracking, but existing AVL systems are too hard to integrate on a short-term basis. You might have multiple agencies involved where you need to know the location of not only municipal officers but also sheriffs and state police, and you're not able to integrate those systems together, or you just don't have AVL. Because the mobile app for Workforce supports a real-time background location tracking capability, you can use Workforce for ArcGIS as a mechanism to track officers in real time. And so I want to show just really quickly how you go about doing that, because this is a capability that we're asked for quite a lot at Esri, and this is a very simple way to accomplish that. So in your ArcGIS organizational portal, in your content, if you create a Workforce for ArcGIS project, that project and all of the supporting maps and layers will be inputted into a folder in your content. And in this case, the community complaints example that I just showed you exists as a folder in my content. And in that folder, I have 4 different layers. A layer that tracks all of the dispatcher or supervisor personnel, a layer that tracks all of the assignments and their location and all their attribute information, a layer that tracks the current location of all of the field staff, and historical location tracking. So if you wanted to do breadcrumb tracking on historical paths of where field staff went, you actually can also enable that as well. And then you also have the maps that power the dispatcher web app and the mobile app. So all of this information, all of these maps and layers are organized here, available to you. And so while they work in the apps that comprise Workforce for ArcGIS, they also work in any other part of your ArcGIS system. So this layer called Workers is a real-time layer of your field workers. You can take this layer and put it into any other web map and use it for any other purpose. So if you have Workforce for ArcGIS on your staff's phone when they're managing an event, you tell them when they start, turn on Workforce. Their real-time position will be captured in this layer. Then you can go to a map and you can, in this case, I've got an operational plan for managing an event. So I've got post locations and barricades and the planned protest route. I can go search my community complaints group. I can add in that workers layer, and now I'm able to get the real-time position of any officer who's currently using Workforce for ArcGIS. I can then share this map into apps that support the event operation. So in this case, something perhaps like an operations dashboard for the command post to track the real-time status of this event, including the ability to be able to visualize those workers in real time. Not just there, but all of the workers that I had in my previous project, I can see all of them as well. So this becomes an ideal mechanism by which we're able to deliver some real-time tracking capability cleanly and easily into any kind of application to support a workflow that you might have around event management without having to do the heavy lift of AVL integration, or as an alternative when AVL isn't available to you. So that was kind of a real quick overview of what's available to you with Workforce for ArcGIS. I hope it gave you a little bit of how you might be able to apply Workforce for ArcGIS to organizational workflows where you may need to create assignments and dispatch them to field staff in a law enforcement agency. Workforce is currently live. It's a live app that you can take advantage of with your ArcGIS online account or with your on-premise ArcGIS Enterprise organizational portal. It is currently live for iOS, so you can download the Workforce mobile app from the App Store today. You can access and start to create projects and view the dispatcher view by going to workforce.arcgis.com. If you're using Android devices, there is our second beta of the Workforce for Android app is currently available in the Google Play Store, and the Windows Phone app is in beta and is available in the Windows Store as long as you are part of the early adopter program. So if you Google early adopter Esri, you can find our web page where you can get added into the early adopter program if you're interested in leveraging the Windows 10 beta app. This is a brand new app for us. It was just released this past June, and there's a lot of exciting new developments that will be coming in the future for Workforce for ArcGIS as well. Some of the highlights include being able to support on-premise portal. That will be coming in December. Right now, it is currently only accessible through ArcGIS Online, but in December, you'll be able to utilize Workforce for ArcGIS with your portal organization as well. Also, the ability to create assignments in bulk manually. So maybe you've got an existing spreadsheet of data and you want to turn them all into assignments in Workforce for ArcGIS. You'll be able to do that. Or if you want to connect Workforce for ArcGIS to some existing CRM system or assignment system where you're initially collecting those complaints, it'll have that ability too. Additionally, coming soon will be the ability to auto-assign tasks. So if there's just a set number of people that you want to assign and you just want them to be dispatched in order, you don't want to have anyone to manually make that decision, you could be able to do that. In the future, we'll also support offline capabilities. So if your workforce is moving in and out of connected environments, that they'll be able to still utilize Workforce. We'll be also improving capabilities around attachments, enabling self-assignments. So when it comes to that proactive activities example, you could utilize Workforce for ArcGIS. The officers in the field could to self-initiate some kind of activity that they assign to themselves. And then also some additional controls over ordering and prioritization of assignments. One more thing there. When it comes to getting support for Workforce.ArcGIS, there's rich documentation on our main site at workforce.arcgis.com, but our GeoNet community forum also has a group specifically for Workforce for ArcGIS, so that's a great resource for being able to go and talk to other people who are using a Workforce for ArcGIS. If you have questions about how other people are applying it, if you've run into a problem and you want to see how other people have solved that, being able to reach out to other Workforce for ArcGIS users for additional support. So that's kind of the overall presentation that we wanted to show you today on Workforce for ArcGIS. But there's a lot of really exciting stuff that's coming up soon as it relates to Esri and public safety. We've been doing this year a series of public safety webinars. We're going to continue to do those into next year. If you're not familiar with these webinars and all of the different types of webinars that are occurring, we're doing regular webinars for fire, EM, law enforcement, national security, and for PSAPs and CAD 911. There's a number of these that are currently coming up. So on October 26th, we're going to be doing a webinar talking about how you can do real-time analysis on calls for service data in a PSAP or law enforcement environment. We're going to do a little bit of discussion on November 3rd about some of the new updates around mobile data collection and applications of the ArcGIS platform for emergency management, and doing an overview on some of the capabilities that modern GIS provides the fire and EMS services on November 16th. If you do have webinar topics that you're interested in, please feel free to send us an email and let us know, and we'd be glad to incorporate those topics into an upcoming webinar.
And Chris, our next law enforcement webinar will be December 15th, and in that one we're going to be discussing how to build and use story maps to combine narrative, text, images, videos, web pages, and also our maps into information products that you can make your briefings and bulletins come alive. And we're going to have special guests from Redlands Police Department and show you how they've used story maps to brief on the San Bernardino shooting. So look forward to that one, December 15th, and registration information should be coming out this week.
And if you so you've got it. If you go to esri.com/industries/public-safety/webinar-series, as you can see here on the slide, that's going to be a continually updated list of all of the upcoming webinars. There'll be links to register from that website. So capture that website, write it down real quick, and that'll be your go-to link for access to these webinars and what's coming up in the future. In addition to the webinar series, we're also taking the show on the road, and we'll be doing a series of public safety symposiums talking about how modern Web GIS can enhance the ability of public safety agencies to keep their communities safe and be smarter. There'll be 3 symposiums that are coming up over the next month and a half. The first symposium is in Sacramento, California, and that's going to be on November 2nd. This is an all-day symposium where we talk about applications of modern GIS from a variety of different public safety perspectives. So you'll get the law enforcement view and the EM view and the fire view. We'll also bring in some practitioners from the field who are adopting some modern smart GIS practices so you'll be able to see how they're leveraging this technology in useful ways to support their missions. The next one is November 14th. That's in Denver, Colorado. And then lastly, on December 9th, we'll be in Philadelphia, PA. If you go to go.esri.com/public-safety-symposium, you can go to this website and register for any of those symposiums. And in addition, during the symposiums, when you register and you go to the site, you can see the agenda for each individual symposium, who will be attending or who will be presenting. In each of these symposiums in the afternoon, we'll be also doing a hands-on exercise. So if you've not worked with Web GIS tools before, but you'd like to get a little bit of experience in building with these tools, in a law enforcement or public safety example context. Some of the technical folks from us at Esri on the Esri public safety team are going to be running you through a series of exercises that are applied in a law enforcement public safety context to help you get started with Web GIS.
And I think it's important to say that these are all half-day, and the most important thing is they're free, but you have to be registered to attend, so make sure you register ahead of time. And like Chris said, we'll have a local user tell a story about how they've succeeded at their agency implementing Smart GIS and Web GIS, and then we'll give some presentations, demonstrations from our team, and then, as Chris was just talking about, the hands-on workshop to finish the day. So, you ready for some questions, Chris?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Number 1, what is the battery drain on a device for running while you're running Workforce?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And as anyone who has a smartphone knows, passive background location tracking does tend to drain a battery. Depending on your device, you could get you're going to get anywhere from 4 to 6 hours worth of use with Workforce. The general best practice, however, is if you're doing an event and it's a long full shift event, you may need to have some of your guys have the ability to either charge their phone or to carry a spare backpack, a spare charger to support having that kind of real-time visibility over the course of the event. I know that we've had some customers already who are already using Workforce for ArcGIS who are simply charging the phone in their vehicle as they're driving around doing work, and that seems to be solving the battery life issues for the course of the entire 8 to 10 or 12-hour shift. But it is a constant challenge for technology and ensuring that you can maximize location tracking capability while minimizing battery impact. So it is a priority for us at Esri to continue to improve on the longevity of those kind of capabilities, and we'll be continuing to work to improve the product and maximize battery life. So we definitely feel your pain on that one.
Is there any plans for Workforce that replace Survey 123 or Collector, or are they complementary to each other?
Yeah, they're really complementary, and it's part of a deliberate strategy on Esri's part. We want our users to be able to combine whatever set of capabilities makes sense for the particular needs that their workflow has. And in some cases, depending on what you're doing, you only need the capability that Collector provides, or you only need the capability that Navigator provides, or you only need the capability that Workforce provides. But what we're trying to do with these mobile apps is give you the ability to chain them together as appropriate, but to be able to use them separately. They're really essentially tools to help you fit your workflow as best as possible, acknowledging that no two workflows are exactly the same. So it's a deliberate attempt to have a complementary set of configurable apps to support any workflow.
And you talked a little bit about working in a disconnected environment. What if you are working in a remote area, say off roads or out of an incorporated area? Can route directions be given by bearing and heading as opposed to turn by turn?
So one of the capabilities that Navigator enables, and we didn't talk in great depth about Navigator, but the value to organizations with Navigator is that it enables GIS managers and professionals to deliver to field forces custom map packages for download onto devices for routing purposes. So it really is up to the GIS manager or professional who is going to be building the routing package what is incorporated into the routing package. But that map package that includes the routing is downloaded to the end user's device, and so yes, they can use Navigator in a disconnected environment. They don't need to be attached to the internet to use it, and it's just going to follow whatever routing the GIS professional had created as part of that package. So there are some options there. Collector for ArcGIS also has completely disconnected capability. So if you've not used Collector before, one of the capabilities that you have is the ability to pick the area that you'll be going out and working in, and it will cache all of the base maps to your device as well as the layers that you need to work with. And then you can go out, work in a disconnected environment, capture data, come back to a connected environment, and all of the data you collected will be synced with your organizational portal. Now, as I mentioned before, Workforce for ArcGIS does not currently support a disconnected environment, but it's in the roadmap. So coming soon will be that ability to work in disconnected environments with Workforce so that you can do routing, data collection, and task assignment all in a disconnected environment.
Question about Navigator, you talked a little bit about Workforce being free to download. What about Navigator? How much does that cost?
Yeah, Navigator is a premium app. It is not one of the apps that you get out of the box with your ArcGIS named user subscription, either through ArcGIS Online or through our on-premise portal. So you have to talk to your account manager to find out what the costs on Navigator are for your organization. And the reason I say that is depending on the licensing that you already have, you may already have Navigator is available as part of an enterprise license agreement, but it is a premium app and doesn't come out of the box available the way that Workforce does or that Collector for ArcGIS does.
And we got time for one more question. So how about this one? Law enforcement data is sensitive, as you and I both know. So if you have your data on your server in an encrypted format, and then you're sharing this data out to Workforce, what ensures that that data is safe and secure?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really, data security encompasses not just Esri products, but your entire organizational strategy. And there's a wide array of different approaches to take relative to ensuring data security. Importantly, as you start to think about things like CGIS implications, you really need to be thinking about when you've got data that has some kind of CGIS obligation, that the data is encrypted not only in transit using HTTPS, but also at rest. And so there are ways in which you can leverage secure data with these apps, but it ultimately becomes the challenge is really how you secure your network internally. How are you communicating through a mobile device securely back to your network and staying inside the network securely? So there's a variety of ways in which the ArcGIS platform can be architected to support those kinds of needs, either on-premise in being able to connect to mobile devices via VPN, or to be able to connect to a secure CGIS-compliant cloud and access those services. It really is ultimately a combination of what's most cost-effective and provides the security needs that your organization requires, but the apps that we showed themselves here, that they can fit any of those security structures. They don't have, there's nothing about the apps themselves that are lacking in the necessary security components. And the other thing that's important to note there is it does Workforce and Collector. They all follow a named user model. So each user has an identity. That identity controls what they do in the app, and that identity can be federated back to your existing security regime, whether that's Active Directory or SAML. So you're able to control things like audit logging and tracking and ensuring that people are only using the apps and accessing the data for what their intended purpose is.
Let's do one more before we go.
Okay.
Does creating projects or assigning tasks use any credits?
No. So the only thing that uses credits, if you are choosing to do all of this work in ArcGIS Online, is the storage of that assignment data is being stored in a hosted feature service. And hosted feature services, the data that you're storing in a hosted feature service consumes credits over time. So depending on what makes sense for you, for many people, hosted feature services really are a cheaper alternative to owning your own infrastructure. But if you have your own infrastructure, you will be able to have those services come from a server that you already own. When Workforce for ArcGIS is enabled for on-premise portal, you'll be able to have those servers credit bearing at all. But really, ultimately, the value of hosted feature services in the cloud is to save your organization infrastructure costs. So if you don't have a need for that, you'll be able to host those services from one of your own ArcGIS servers that are in your organization. If it makes sense for you, then the hosted feature services in ArcGIS Online are there for you to be able to take advantage of as well.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chris. As Chris mentioned, if you have any ideas for future webinars, contact Chris or I, or if you have any questions about today's webinars or questions about anything else law enforcement, jbeck@esri.com or cdelaney@esri.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again, Chris, and have a good day all.